Good morning and welcome. This is 10 Years Hence. Our speaker comes to us this morning from Menlo Park, California. Robbie Kellman Baxter brings over 20 years of strategy consulting and marketing experience to Peninsula Strategies, a consulting firm focused on helping companies leverage subscription pricing, digital community, and freemium business models to build deeper relationships with their customers. Her clients have included startups and mid-sized venture-backed companies, as well as industry leaders such as ASICS, Netflix, Electronic Arts, and the Wall Street Journal. Peninsula Strategies has advised nearly 100 organizations in more than 20 industries on growth strategy. A sought-after writer and keynote speaker, Ms. Baxter has presented at top universities, associations, and corporations, as well as to corporate boards and leadership teams around the world. She has created and starred in 10 video courses in collaboration with LinkedIn Learning on business topics ranging from innovation to customer success and membership. As the author of The Membership Economy, a book that has been named a top 5 marketing book of the year by Inc.com, Baxter coined the popular business term, membership economy. Her expertise with companies in the emerging membership economy includes software as a service, media firms, consumer products, and community organizations. Prior to launching Peninsula Strategies, she was a strategy consultant at Booz Allen, a New York City Urban Fellow, and a Silicon Valley product marketer. Baxter received her MBA from the Stanford Graduate School of Business and graduated with honors from Harvard College. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Robbie Baxter Kellman. So I'll just hang on to this.
Thanks. Thanks for the warm introduction, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my first time on campus, and it's really such a gorgeous place. So thank you for the very kind welcome. And I want to start by asking all of you to close your eyes and think of the last time you felt like a member, like you belonged somewhere and you had a relationship with the organization. It might be something that you have a subscription for. It might be something that you carry a card for. It might be an organization that you call yourself a member of. Okay, open your eyes. And maybe a couple of you can shout it out. So what did you think of?
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps.
AAA.
AAA.
Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime.
American Airlines.
American Airlines.
Starbucks.
Costco. Starbucks.
USAA.
USAA. Excellent. Yeah, so there's a lot of different, when you start to think about membership, there's a lot of different things that come to mind. Some of these you guys mentioned. These are some of my favorites and some of the ones that I researched when I was writing my book, Membership Economy. One of my favorites is Netflix. And actually, I first fell in love with Netflix as a consumer. I actually found them when I was a young mom. And I was up all night with my baby and needed something to do. And I loved the 3 out at a time. I mean, I fell in love with Netflix. Always having something to watch. Always having something that I wanted to watch because of the queuing service that they had. And always being able to discover something new that I wanted to watch because of their discovery algorithm. And I also love no late fees because I wasn't very good at the whole be kind, rewind, or we will charge you $3 that Blockbuster did. And so as I was falling in love with Netflix as a consumer, I also had the opportunity to start working with them as a consultant. So I had started my career as a strategy consultant, and after business school, I started my own firm. And I got a call actually from Netflix. So I'd already fallen in love with them as a consumer. And now I had the opportunity to work with them as a strategist. And I worked with them on customer acquisition and partnerships. And I fell in love with the business model. I loved the recurring revenue, which is kind of The ultimate goal of any business is to have predictable recurring revenue. That creates great valuations in the public markets. It makes it easier to invest in the future. It allows you to get to know your customers a little bit better, which allows you to create better products and services for them. So it's this nice virtuous cycle. And as I was learning about Netflix and realizing what an amazing model it was, I started getting all these calls from people who said, we want to be the Netflix of fill in the blank. We want to be the Netflix of news. We want to be the Netflix of music. We want to be the Netflix of software. We want to be the Netflix of bicycles. We want to be the Netflix of dental pain management products. I mean, you name it, somebody wanted to Netflix it. And I started calling these trends, the things that they had in common, I called it the membership economy. I started to notice that there were a bunch of attributes about all of these organizations. When people said, we want to be the Netflix of something, what they really meant was, we want to join the membership economy. So what in the world is the membership economy? It's characterized by 4 major trends. Not all of them need to be present, but each one of them layers in more value to the business model. So the first one is a move from ownership to access. Second one is a move from a single big payment that you make one time, a transaction, to many small transactions that happen forever. It's also about going from a transactional mindset to a relationship mindset. So a transactional mindset is you conduct the transaction with me and we're done. And off I go to go find somebody else who wants to conduct a transaction with me, and off you go to conduct other transactions, hopefully with me, but maybe with other people. And the last one is a move from one-way communication, where I'm speaking to you through my loudspeaker and you have to listen, to not just two-way communication, but multi-directional communication under the umbrella of the organization. So this means I'm talking to you, you're talking back to me, and you're talking with each other about things that are relevant to you under my umbrella, so things in the context of my business. When you put these things together, you kind of have a painter's palette for new business models. So I know this series is called 10 Years Hence. These 4 traits can be applied in almost any business model to increase the value of that business for the investor and for the customer. So they're tools that you can use, they're trends that you can take advantage of to build new kinds of business models. At the heart of all of this is something that I call a forever transaction. And a forever transaction is that moment when a customer takes off their consumer hat, where they're looking for alternatives, puts on a member hat, and says, this decision has been made for the foreseeable future. I am going to continue buying from you, I'm going to trust you, and in exchange, you are going to take care of my needs in a particular area. You're either going to solve a problem or help me achieve a goal, and you're going to do that forever. So this is like you join the gym because that's going to be the place where you get and stay fit. You don't necessarily join a gym because you want access to a particular machine or a particular class. It's about that higher order goal. So over time, the gym might change how they help you achieve that goal, but the goal stays constant. So the forever transaction is really about having a shared goal as opposed to a love of a particular product or a particular employee or a particular process that the company uses. In the membership economy, that moment of transaction is the starting line for the relationship, not the finish line. In traditional transactional businesses, at the moment of transaction, you're done and you go your separate ways. But in a membership model, that's where the heavy lifting starts for the organization. It's all about engagement. It's all about retention, keeping that customer happy and satisfied, and continuing to evolve side by side with them on their journey to achieving their goals. So this is not such a new concept. Membership has been around forever. Can anybody tell me who this is? It's a trick question. I'll give you a clue. I was an English major. This is Charles Dickens, and he sold his books on subscription. So you would get chapter 1, you come back next month, you get chapter 2, and you pay him. And that was how he supported his additional writing. So subscription models have been around for a long time. Trade guilds, right? So you know about trade guilds. They've been around for centuries. Membership, this is talking about power by the hour, the concept of power by the hour, where instead of buying a Rolls-Royce engine, you can subscribe and access the power. Because what do you want? If you buy an engine, you don't really want, in most cases, you don't want to own the engine. You want to have access to the power for whatever you need to use it for. So it's about, when you're thinking about these business models and you're thinking about where you're going to work and how to create the most valuable business models, you want to think about what it is that the customer actually wants and how can you repackage that value in a way that makes better sense and better aligns with their long-term goals. So membership's not a new thing. So the question is, why is this happening now? Why was I invited to speak on this topic to you as you're going out and launching your careers? And I think there's a couple of reasons. The first one is that technology is extending the infrastructure that enables trusting relationships. So what does that mean? It used to be, for the examples I showed you, it used to be that you would have to have something physical in order to have that long-term relationship. You had to actually be in the same time and place so that you could have that known relationship. But technology is enabling us to connect all the time, to communicate in both directions. Stored data makes it possible for all of us to access a lot of information from the organizations that we are involved with, and for them to gather all of our data and learn about us and create a more intimate, ongoing relationship where it really feels like they know us as a customer. The other thing is that there has been a tremendous influx of venture money. And this is really important as you're thinking about business models. How many of you are going to a big company for your job? So a few, hands up really high, just for a second, please. Yeah, okay, so a good percentage of you are going to big companies. And how many of you are going to startups or small companies? A couple of you, okay. So here's what's interesting to think about if you're coming from a big company, if you're going to a big company, is that all of these venture-backed companies have 7-year time horizons before they have to kind of generate revenue or offer their investors a good exit, profit. And so they have this long lead time before they have to be profitable. And that allows them to invest in a long-term relationship. If you're working at a large company, especially a public company, you have quarterly goals, right? And so it's really hard sometimes to focus on the long-term interest of the customer because you have to hit your quarterly numbers. So there's a big temptation, for example, back to my Blockbuster versus Netflix example, there's an incentive to do whatever it takes to get to the quarter number. So if you need to charge late fees, if you need to do something that has a short-term benefit but might lose the relationship for the long term, there's a temptation to do that. If you have a long runway, you can afford to continue investing in building this trusted relationship. So, it's very tempting, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. It's very tempting because of that to focus on the short term and to focus on what's in it for us as a company. But in the membership economy, it's the focus on the long-term relationship with the customer that really makes the difference. So whenever you're thinking about products or services or making a decision about how to treat the customer, you want to be thinking about two things. One of them, of course, is what's in it for us. Is this going to lead to recurring revenue for us? Is this going to lead to good profitability? Is this going to lead to a better valuation in the public markets? But you also want to be thinking about what's in it for the customer, and you always want to be straddling those two things. Amazon has this, I guess it's kind of like a little mnemonic where they often have an empty chair in the room, which is the customer chair. So as you're making a decision in a meeting, you say, well, what would the customer say if they were sitting right here? It's all about transparency, and it's about thinking about, would this be in the customer's interest? Would this be something that the customer would understand and think is fair? So you want to kind of straddle those two. When you're thinking about what's in it for the customer, a good place to start is, I always go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So he was the psychologist, the researcher in the 1940s, and he came up with this hierarchy of needs that all human beings share. And at the bottom of the hierarchy is the physiological needs. These are things like food, shelter, Wi-Fi, things that you can't live without. And once that need has been met, and only once that need has been met, can you go to the higher order needs. So that includes things like safety. So you want to mitigate risk. This is insurance. This is making sure that you're safe. Then once those are taken care of, then you go into belonging, right? You want to be recognized. So you know the old show Cheers, where everyone knows your name. There's that feeling of wanting to walk into a place and having them say, hey, Robbie, welcome back. How are your kids? Do you want the usual? This feeling of being known and accepted. And then from there, it's not enough to just be accepted. You say, well, now that I'm accepted, I want to be recognized for my contributions and my achievements. I want to achieve some status. I want to be held in high esteem by my peers. And then finally, once that's happened, it gives us an opportunity to what he called self-actualization. And that's just kind of a fancy term for saying you want to achieve your highest purpose. You want to contribute to the world in the way that is most authentic to you. And it takes a while to get up there. And the reason I show this is because when you're thinking about what to offer your customers and kind of thinking about future business models and future ways of creating and packaging value, you want to align with these higher order needs, particularly, belonging and status, and then freeing people up to concentrate on what really matters. So this is something to just keep in mind as you're thinking about your models. All of this, I always get this question, so I pop this slide in. All of this applies whether you're looking at a consumer product or a business product. So I've worked with a lot of B2B companies, Oracle, SurveyMonkey, the thing is, you spend all your time at work. So treating the customer, if your customer is a business, you still have people that you want to build long-term relationships with and people whose problems you want to solve. So just keep that in mind. So for anybody here working in a B2B role, business to business, where you're selling your product to corporations as opposed to selling them to individuals? A couple of you. So most of you are in consumer. Okay, good. So I wanted to give an example of a B2B example. So everybody familiar with Salesforce? Yes, okay. Salesforce, software company. Of all the companies I've worked with, they're one of the most membership economy oriented businesses. They're very focused on the long term. They're very focused on solving the needs of their customers. And one of the things that is really interesting to me is they have this group of customers that they call MVPs. And the MVPs are the people in the organization, I call them super users, the people in the organization who have gone beyond just being an excellent customer, and they've actually dedicated their own time and resources to helping Salesforce. So this goes one step beyond just being a regular customer for life, and they do things like give feedback to the organization, to the product teams. They speak at Salesforce conferences and events. They participate in user groups to help new customers get up to speed. And you know what they get for all of these contributions from Salesforce? They don't get money. They don't get free product. They get recognition. So they get status in the community. They get a sense of belonging. They get status in the community. They also get these cute shoes and the socks when they attend Dreamforce, which basically is a way of signaling to people that they have special status. And there's only about 50 people that have this designation. It's a pretty big deal. But it's a way of building a deeper relationship with the very best customers. So I talked a little bit about what a super user was when I gave you that Salesforce example. But to think of it in the context of the companies where you're working, you take your best customers, and those are the ones that have the highest lifetime customer value, and the ones that you wish you could make more of. And you go one step further, and you say, which ones are actually giving their own time and resources to help our organization be successful? So these are people who do, I think, one of three things. They're either giving feedback to the organization about how to make their products and services better. They are onboarding and recruiting new members. And they're recruiting new members, and they're helping onboard new members who are learning and still getting used to how to get the most value out of the products and services that they're paying for. And super users can be your flywheel for growth. These are the people who actually help the company be more successful. And if you could figure out who they are and how to make more of them, you have this secret weapon for growth and for retention and engagement. So at this point, I want to pause and just walk you through the elements of the membership economy. And when I work with companies, these are the steps that we go through to strengthen the model that we have. So the first thing that's different in the membership economy is the organization itself. So instead of having acquisition as the most important metric, retention and engagement become the most important metrics. Instead of being centered around the product team, it's centered around the customer journey and understanding that journey. So the whole organization feels different because they're putting the customer at the center of everything they do. The second thing that's different is the funnel. So are you guys all familiar with the sales and marketing funnel? At the top of the funnel, nobody knows who you are, so they become aware, and then there's trial, and then there's engagement, repeat, right? That's where the transaction happens. And then you're done, and then you go out and you find more, and you put them in the top, and you keep feeding people through the funnel, and some of them have been there before. In the membership economy, the funnel actually looks more like an hourglass because that moment of transaction leads to a much broader and deeper relationship. And a lot of for example, the marketing happens after that moment of transaction because it's not enough to just get them to sign up or join. You want them to actually engage with your products and services and stay with you for a long time. So you need to communicate just as much, if not more, after they've joined as you did before when you were trying to attract them in the first place. So the way that the funnel works is really different. Third thing is pricing. So in subscription models, the good rule of thumb is be as simple as possible and no simpler. So a lot of companies, when they start to think about subscription pricing, it's really tempting to want to charge as it costs the company, or to kind of nickel and dime and get more value. So any of you who's ever paid like a phone bill, where you look at it and you're like, I don't even know exactly what I'm paying for or how it got to be this high a number, but there's all kinds of extras and it's really complex. When you have really complex pricing, you're signaling to your customers that they should become experts on your pricing strategy. So, for example, for those of you who fly a lot, you might follow the points guy or one of his competitors online. Like there are whole cottage industries around understanding how companies price so that you as a customer can game the system. In other words, you don't trust that the company is going to give you a fair price. And as a result, you try to understand the pricing yourself so that you can get the best deal. In the membership economy, as I said earlier, the core goal is to build a trusting relationship forever. And that starts with how you set your pricing. So what I usually suggest to people using subscription pricing is to have no more than 3 tiers of pricing and to start with just one. And to make it as simple as possible. The reason I said no simpler is that sometimes there's an expense with onboarding at the beginning, or there's a real difference in a small subset of customers who use some very expensive feature. Usually it's around, they need live service or they need a physical product to go with it. And there can be cases where you can justify a slightly more complex model, but for the most part, the rule of thumb is how can I make this model as simple as possible? And a way to think about it is if you ran a buffet, like a Vegas-style all-you-can-eat buffet, right? The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to be worried that people are going to, everybody's going to go to the caviar and shove it in their mouths and eat the most expensive thing and get and then what are you going to do? You're going to lose money on every customer. But the reality is that very few people do that. Once you understand the customer behavior, it's a lot easier to price it. And most places, they just put everything out, they price it, and they know that the 90% of the people are going to be profitable and 10% are not, and it's all going to work out. Once you understand the customer journey and how they're going to use your products and services, it's a lot easy to set more simplified pricing. Does that make sense? The more you know your customers, the more analytical work you do, that means it's complicated on your side, the more simple you can present your pricing, the more simple the pricing that you present to your customers. The other thing about pricing is what I call is freemium and understanding that. This is a really useful tool as you're moving forward and thinking about how to price things. So much is possible that's free, but you don't want to overuse it, you don't want to underuse it. So when you use free, remember that it's just a tactic. It's not a pricing model, and it's not a strategy. There's two kinds of free that sometimes get conflated. There's a free trial, and there's freemium. So freemium is a business model where some people get some things for free forever. In other words, I never have to pay, and for the rest of my life, I get value for free. So this is like your LinkedIn membership. This is something where you get it for free forever. There are people in the community that are paying, but they're getting a different set of services. And so together that creates a good business model. There's 3 times when it's okay to do freemium. You want to use freemium when you're trying to change behavior of a large group. So for example, when people were getting newspapers in print and the news companies wanted to teach people to go digital, they made all the digital news free, and that taught people, like, oh, I didn't think, there were a lot of people when digital news came out that said, I can never enjoy free news. I can never enjoy digital news. I like the paper when I'm having my coffee, and I love that kind of physical experience. And then they said, no, actually, I'm going online a lot. And so the freemium model there was usually something like you get 10 articles a month for free, and then you bump up against a paywall. So you could get 10 articles for free forever, and a lot of people do that. Or you say, wow, I didn't think that my behavior was changing, but now that I keep hitting the 11th article really early in the month, I guess I must be really using it digitally, and I guess I'm comfortable paying now. I'm comfortable with a digital subscription. So that's one reason to change behavior. A second is if you have a viral business model. And that means that the people who are using your product for free are actually touching people who are willing to pay, and so they become your marketing channel. So this is like a SurveyMonkey example. So, are you guys familiar with SurveyMonkey? It's for market research, digital online market research. So if I send out, let's say I sent out a free survey to all of you saying, how did you like the talk today? And that would be a free survey, 100 people, one question, no complex analytics. That's a free survey. But maybe one of you gets that survey and says, oh, this is a cool little app. I'm going to look into it. And maybe you work in a market research department. You say, I'm going to subscribe to the highest level of service. So in that case, I am your subscription channel. I'm your marketing channel, and that's how you found out about me. So the third reason that freemium can make sense is when the customer's the product, when there's a network effect. So back to the LinkedIn example. How many of you have a LinkedIn account? Everybody, good. And how many of you pay for it? Okay.
It did for a while, one more thing.
Okay, so very few, 2.5 people in the room paid for it. And that's okay with LinkedIn. It's not worth it for everybody. Here's who it's worth something for. It's worth it if you're in sales. It's worth it if you are a recruiter. And it's worth it if you're actively looking for a job. And for everybody else, for the rest of us, we can probably get by on free. Now, they're changing that and their strategy is evolving, They've added LinkedIn Learning, they acquired lynda.com, and they have some other features that they're rolling out. But for the most part, LinkedIn is perfectly useful for free. And the reason is that for those 3 groups of people that are paying, it's not worth paying for if the rest of us aren't there, right? If you're a recruiter and no MBA2s are online, are in the LinkedIn network, they can't do their recruiting very well, so they won't pay. So in other words, you're the product. So that is the 3rd reason that freemium can make sense. So again, to summarize, it's to change behavior, it's when there's a viral component to the product, or when there's a network effect, that each additional person that joins for free creates value for the people who are paying. Next thing that you want to think about in a membership model or subscription model is the onboarding process. And this is another place where organizations are really changing, and as you kind of think about the future and what kind of organization your company needs to have, you want to think about what the onboarding process is and who is supporting it. So onboarding is that moment after you buy something where you decide if it's useful to you. And this is, it's one thing if you buy something, right? If I buy a car and then I drive it off the lot and I say, oh, actually I don't like this car, it's kind of too late, right? Maybe I don't enjoy it, maybe I never drive it again. But that's my problem, right? It's not the company's problem. They don't really care or know or care to know that I am not enjoying my car because I've already bought it. But if I'm subscribing and I don't like it, or I don't use it, or I don't use it properly, and then I decide I don't like it because I have bad information, I cancel my subscription and they lose the revenue. So it becomes really important that the company makes sure that I'm getting enjoyment out of the product. And those first seconds, minutes, and days after I buy the product, after I subscribe, after my transaction, that's when I'm still wearing my consumer hat and I'm still thinking, do I want to cancel? Is this something that's going to be a new habit for me? Oh, I joined this gym, I don't know if I'm going to stay, I have 30 days. I might just cancel after the first month or after my 30-day free trial. Or I subscribe to Netflix, I'm using it for a few weeks, but I can't find anything I want to watch. That's why Netflix had to invest in their recommendation engine. They were pretty much the first company that had a recommendation engine of any scale. And the reason that they did that is because engagement is a leading indicator for retention. So before you cancel something, you usually stop using it. And there's usually a little bit of time that elapses between the time that you decide in your head, I'm not using this anymore, and the time you actually stop paying. So you want to onboard people for success. You want them to learn how to use your products and services in the best way possible and get value for what they're spending money on right away so that they can relax, take off their consumer hat, put on their membership hat, and start thinking about higher order needs. Does that make sense? Okay. The corollary to that, to onboarding, is customer success. So where I live, Silicon Valley, almost all the companies have gotten rid of their customer support departments, and they've got customer success departments. And you might think, well, that's just naming, it's the same darn thing. But it's actually a little different, because customer support is about solving problems as they arise. That's how people are compensated. They're encouraged to get people off the phone as quickly as possible and not be upset, right? That's kind of the way to think about it. Customer success is about maximizing the value that your customer is getting from the products and services they're already paying for. They are rewarded with numbers because of numbers in engagement and retention, and deepening of kind of the overall relationship when it's an enterprise kind of thing. So if you have a customer success organization, your employees are going to look at their customers differently, because instead of thinking, I have to get you off the phone, they're thinking, I have to delight you and I have to keep you from canceling. So it's a very different kind of mindset. And I spoke at a customer success conference called Customer Success, so creatively titled. I spoke at the Customer Success conference last year, and they told me that they have doubled the number of attendees every year since they launched the conference. And the year I was there, they were expecting, I think, 1,200 people. They had 2,000 people. They had people sitting in the aisles. They had to keep people out. at the front door because there were too many people that wanted to learn how to do this. And it's still one of the fastest growing career job titles for professional jobs right now. I'm also seeing it in non-technical companies. So a lot of companies are adopting this approach to support. Last thing I want to talk about is technology. And I think I mentioned at the beginning that I was an English major, and not only was I an English major, but I studied poetry. So kind of about as far from technology as you can get. But even though that's the case, I am a good consumer. I'm what they call tech-knowledgeable. So I have tech knowledge, which basically means that I can recognize an opportunity where technology can help me be more effective at doing what I need to do. I'm capable of writing a requirements document to explain what it is that I need, and I'm capable of talking to technology companies about their solutions and making a thoughtful decision. Those skills, those tech-knowledgeable skills, are just as basic in any job as it is to be able to read and write. You wouldn't go in for a job interview without being able to read or write in a professional setting. And you shouldn't go in without knowing how to set requirements and use technology. And the reason for this is that, like when I started my career 100 years ago, the technology was all in the IT department. And if I had a problem, I could mention it to the technology department, and they would figure out if technology could come up with a solution and give me a yes or no. And then they'd give me a timeline, which was usually somewhere between 3 years and never for getting it implemented. And I really had very little to do with the process. Today, especially because of SaaS, software as a service, which is a new way of designing technology, or newish way of designing technology, where you access it as a service, which means you don't have to store it, you don't have to maintain it, you don't have to manage upgrades. The company does all of that, and you can access it and you can subscribe, usually either monthly or annually, so you have a lot more flexibility. And one of the reasons for the rise in SaaS is because it allowed business owners, functional leaders, to make their own buying decisions about software and to implement it themselves without going to IT. So when you're thinking about a membership model and you're thinking about how you're going to have to keep evolving it to be relevant to the customers and members that you're serving, you want to have technology as a tool that you can use, whether you're in finance or marketing or sales or any part of the organization. So when you take these 7 things together, there's always ways to deepen and strengthen your model and focus it more on that long-term customer relationship. I'm going to give you an example now. This is the Amazon River, so I wanted to talk a little bit about Amazon. And what's really interesting to me about Amazon is that they've had the same forever promise for as long as they've been in existence, which is to be the easiest way for consumers to acquire whatever it is that they need with the least amount of friction. So when they started, that was just books. They had a vision, right? The vision is, I think of it and it's here. And if I don't want it, it disappears. That's the ideal thing that they're aiming for. At the beginning, it was just, we deliver books. You can access them, choose what you want online, order it, and we'll ship it to you. And over time, they've continued to layer in new features and functionality to get closer and closer to achieving that forever promise. So they started with books. They went to being a retailer of everything. They created a technology infrastructure to enable other retailers to participate and serve their customers in this way. They came up with, more recently, Alexa, so you just say what you need. Last week I had to return something to Amazon, and all that I had to do was literally take the item, not even in its original packaging, just the item, bring it to the UPS store and hand it to them. And I had like a little QR code, and that was it. So they're making it, they keep removing friction from the process. They also experimented last year with, and I don't know if this is still being tested, but with asking their most active customers to give them a key to their house. so that the packages could be left inside. It's like one more step removed to getting it to just appear where it belongs in your house. It's a little bit creepy, but it's also a continued march toward, I think I need it, Alexa hears me say it, and the item appears immediately inside my home. So you can see how the promise has stayed the same, but the way they deliver it has continued to evolve over time. That first transaction when I bought a book in 1997, that was just the beginning of the relationship. Two principles that I want to share when you're thinking about how to design services and experiences for the long term is triggers and hooks, and they're different. A trigger is what gets somebody to buy, and a hook is what gets them to stay. So maybe I was triggered for Amazon because I needed a book and I couldn't find it at my local bookstore, but what hooked me was Amazon Prime, right? That once I signed up and I saw how often I was coming to Amazon, then Amazon, and the only thing that was keeping me from using Amazon more was the shipping fees. Having shipping included for a fixed price was enough to change my behavior and make me a member. That was that moment where I said, okay, I'm going to pretty much buy everything here. If they have it, I'm going to look here first, and I'm only going to look elsewhere if they don't have it. You want to know that people are going to stay and that you have a hook before you turn on the loudspeaker. This is probably the biggest mistake that I see companies doing today. Focusing on acquisition, bringing people into the funnel without knowing if they're going to stay and if they're going to be valuable customers. So, put your loudspeaker on the floor. For now, focus on engagement and retention. This is the way virtually every industry is moving right now, moving toward that long-term relationship, moving toward protecting the relationship with the customers they have, as opposed to the much more expensive and difficult acquiring new customers. Another example I wanted to share is the car industry. If you think about the way most people interact with cars, you buy a car, you drive it off the floor, you come back in 10 years, maybe you come back to the same dealer, or maybe you go somewhere else. But it's a very transactional experience. It's a very, in many ways, impersonal experience. There's a lot of time between purchases where you have no relationship. But over time, that's really changed. This is a Tesla. A Tesla is pretty much technology wrapped in metal. So it's a very different way of thinking about what a car is. And it's really about the software that allows you to be connected, to have data about continuously improving the car once you've bought it. It's a model that allows the car to get better over time. Most of the time you drive it off the showroom floor and it immediately loses value. In this case, it becomes more valuable as new features are ready, as autonomous driving is available. You can actually have it in your car without having to bring it into the shop. It just is upgraded on its own. So, question is, where is this going next? 10 years hence. When I wrote Membership Economy 5 years ago, most of what was happening was limited to software and content and services. There were no real physical products. But what I'm seeing now, and as you're thinking about the future, the place that is ripe for this kind of transformation is in the automotive industry. It's in heavy equipment. I just spoke at the Association for Equipment Manufacturers annual meeting a few months ago. Companies like Caterpillar are thinking about services revenue, about building a direct relationship with the end user and with the customer, not going through, these companies are thinking about how do we build that long-term relationship directly with the people using our products and services, and how do we create more value that helps them achieve their goals. And instead of saying, how do I create better cars or better machines? So the places where I've seen that with heavy equipment, I've seen that with manufacturing. So there are subscription boxes. Does anybody here subscribe to any kind of subscription box? Stitch Fix, Latote, BarkBox, Birchbox, a couple of people. So that's a really fast, Dollar Shave Club. where you can get your razors delivered to you on a monthly schedule. Almost everything in the kind of world of consumer products is now, every consumer product company right now is experimenting with subscription boxes. Adidas has a subscription box for kids' sneakers. Under Armour has a subscription box for athletic wear. This is very much a trend on the manufacturing and retail side. And then another place where I'm seeing a lot of it is in manufacturing itself. So the company that I'm working with in California, Carbon 3D, they're the ones that make the Adidas shoes that are customized with the customized cushion that's designed for the way the way that your stride works, the way that you run, your weight. It's all customized and it's manufactured on 3D printers to order. What's really interesting about their model is they make the 3D printers, and you can't buy the 3D printers. You can only subscribe to them. You can only access them by being a member of their organization. So it's a whole, not only is it a new way of manufacturing, but it's a new way of accessing manufacturing services if you are a manufacturer. So, as you look around and you go into your jobs, you'll start to see these principles being applied in a lot of surprising places. So what does this mean for all of you? Entering the workforce, thinking long-term about kind of where you want to invest your career, what's changing in the way business models are being designed, and what kinds of organizations do you want to be a part of? I would encourage you to look at how well the companies you work at understand the customers they serve and their changing needs. It's becoming increasingly easy to steal away customers if you're not providing ongoing value to them and you don't understand what their needs are. And the organizations that are investing in really understanding not just what it takes to be a trigger to get somebody to make that first buying decision, but where the hooks are to keep them, those are the companies that are going to thrive. I want to share an example of how the model needs to evolve around the needs of the customer. I'm a big fan of libraries. I always have been. I don't need to own a lot of books. I don't want to clutter up my house with too many books, and I love to read. Libraries, you might say that their mission, their forever promise is free information for everybody, right? Everybody can come into the library, access the information. You don't have to pay unless you have late fees. That's always been their model. Now, another company that has the exact same model, exact same forever promise is Google. Google does the exact same thing as libraries. They provide access to the world's information for free. They do it in a really different way. And one of the things that's interesting to me about when you think about these two different kinds of organizations that have the same model is that I think that libraries, when they started, they had the same goal, right? What is the easiest way to take the world's information and make it accessible? And they said, well, I guess we have to print it, put it in books, and then put it in a place where people can go and know where it's going to be, a building. So libraries are completely, their org structure is completely organized around books and buildings. Google is organized about information. And what I think is a little bit sad is the libraries could have applied that same kind of analytical tools, the same kinds of algorithms that Google was using, if they were thinking about what's in the best interest for the customer. How can we best solve the timeless problem of accessing information with today's technology? So very different approaches. And what I see happening with a lot of organizations is they fall in love with their products too much, in this case books and buildings, and they don't stay focused. They don't love their customers as much. So they're not saying, what's the best, if I were starting out today, and I was saying, what's the best way to make information free to all, what would I do, right? You would come up with a very different solution. So sometimes by taking that step back and saying, what's the promise? What are the tools I have today, and what's the best way to do it? A technique I use a lot with organizations is we say, what if your most strategic person left your company, found a really good technologist and an investor with deep pockets, and they decided they wanted to steal your best customers? What would they do? And immediately the companies come up with all these ideas that they were not thinking about before, because they're saying, well, you don't have the legacy. So here's another example. I spoke at the International Car Wash Association recently. They now have subscription car washes. Most car washes now have a membership model where you get unlimited access, usually for like around the cost of 2 to 3 car washes. You pay a monthly fee that's somewhere in that price range for unlimited access to the car wash. And something that I've seen where I live is these car wash trucks that actually come to big parking lots and wash your cars while you're at work, right? Which is better, right? Because nobody really wants to go to the car wash. Everything that they were talking about at the car wash was about, our car wash brushes take only 9 minutes instead of 10 minutes, and we can get you out of there in 11 and a half minutes instead of 12 minutes. And I said to them, people don't want to go to the car wash. They want to have a clean car. So how about if you have them have a clean car without going to the car wash? And they said, well, no, because we've spent all of our money on real estate and car wash equipment here. So they were basically saying, we're not going to come up with mobile car washes. We're not going to invest in that because we don't want our customers to do that. So you can almost like read the writing on the wall. If you said, where are they going to be in 10 years? They're going to be stuck with a lot of real estate and a lot of obsolete equipment because they're not mobilizing with the customer. They're trying to they're hoping that the customer doesn't know that there's a better solution out there to serve their needs. So if I leave you with one thing, it's this. In order to have a successful forever transaction, which is really what every organization wants to have, you need to love your customers and their mission more than you love any product that you've manufactured, any person on your team, any process that you've established. So thank you for your time. We have about 20 minutes for Q&A and discussion, and I'll open it up.
So, Robbie, let me begin. I think about services offered by smart people. Google comes to mind, and they sent me an invitation to join Google Plus. I never could figure, I thought, well, this has got to be good, right? I never could figure out what it was. And then they said, well, people are joining your circles. And I said, I didn't even know I had circles. What do they do? What are they for? And eventually Google said, well, this product is essentially a failure. And I said to myself, well, okay, there's one more thing I don't have to pay attention to because it was not intuitive and I could never figure out what the hell it was.
Yeah.
So what went wrong there? I mean, they obviously have smart people. Why does a product like that not get off the ground?
So there's a couple of reasons that come to mind for me. So the first thing is when you look at Google as a company, they have 1 million initiatives going on at any one time, and lots of them are failing. So that's kind of their culture, is like try a lot of stuff and see what works and just keep moving forward, which is really different than, let's say, like, because Google's right near where I live, and then Apple's right near them, and they have such diametrically opposed strategy. Apple is very deliberate. They pick a few bets and they really dig in on those bets. So very different strategy. And then I would say they did a horrible job of onboarding people into that. They didn't, like you said, you're a pretty smart guy, right? Like if you can't figure out the value, and you're both, a highly educated person and a business person who probably has both a personal and professional interest in trying new things, if they can't explain it to you and they can't help you understand what it's going to do for you and how to get value easily, the product is really doomed because they've made the bar too high to attract and engage new members. The other thing is there was a lot of competition growing at the same time, and they didn't do anything to differentiate or help customers understand why here versus there.
So they were perfectly okay with failure? Is that part of that fail often, fail fast, and try something new?
I think so. I mean, I imagine the people that were responsible for Google Plus weren't okay with it, but I think that the organization as a whole expects that any number of initiatives are going to fail, but they're trying to have their hands, they have their hands in everything.
So a kind of a follow-on question, how do you know what's next? I teach change communication. I'm writing a book on change. The really hard part, it seems to me, is you gotta change or you're Sears, right? So, the place your grandma used to shop. So, how do you know, what's the process look like? How do you know what's over the horizon or around the corner? How do you know which direction to go in and where to put your bet?
If you don't have a crystal ball?
Exactly.
So, well, first of all, the Sears example, I think, I mean, it's really interesting to me because they're like the original membership economy company, right? Like they had multiple channels. They were the one, they really popularized the idea of a catalog that allowed you, even if you didn't live near a store, to access all of their products and services. People were incredibly loyal to them. And I think they kind of, piddled it away. They didn't really continue to evolve. And I think one of the, it's hard to predict where to go, but you can start to tell when you're losing your customers. If you're in a membership organization, if you're retaining your customers, but you're not attracting new ones, it means that your trigger, your value proposition to an outsider isn't compelling anymore. And that's a signal that what you're doing is not working and to explore other alternatives. So that would kind of be the first thing that I would look at. And the second thing is to assume that what you have, especially in membership, it's always ripe for change. The norm should be continuous tinkering as much as possible, as opposed to, like, I think of the companies that go away for months or years and then they come back with something new and jazz hands and ta-da, this is our new product. You look at, like, you gave the example of Google, but also Facebook. I mean, lots of companies, they're constantly changing their products, saying, oh, this didn't work, this worked. Keep, continuous change as opposed to change as a one-time, kind of a one-time massive thing. It's like when you're pruning your trees, it's much easier and cheaper to prune them, every year than to wait 20 years and then you've got these huge, heavy, strong branches. It's much harder to cut them and then also the tree suffers a lot more.
So your thinking then is that rather than trying to intuit or get a group of small, really smart people together and figure out what's next, you let your customers do it for you?
Okay, so this is a good question. So, Steve Jobs famously said, my customers don't know what they want.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Faster horses. So I wouldn't say have your customers do your heavy lifting on product design, innovation, change. But I would say that customers are experts on what's working and not working for them today. They can tell you, I have this problem. It's kind of like when you go see the doctor and the doctor says, you're the expert on telling me how you feel, but you are not the expert on diagnosing or self-medicating, right? I'm the expert on prescriptions and diagnosis. So what I would say is you don't wait for your customers to tell you what they want, but you look at your customers and you try to understand what they need and what their choices are, and then to come up with a good diagnostic and a good prescription.
Okay, other questions?
Hi, we have one right back here. Okay. Hi, quick question. You mentioned the tree example, right? You let it grow for 20 years and you can't really trim it down, it gets injured. For a company that's been around a long time, or an organization that's been around a long time and very mired in tradition, and how to do things, what's the best way or good examples that you have to transition more to that membership economy space? Maybe they've started in some areas, but they're not fully there. I mean, what are some tips and tricks that you might have seen that we can use?
Yeah, so actually I'm writing a book on this topic right now. So no, it's actually like all I'm thinking about all the time. So I'm glad you asked, because it is tricky and it's a how question. And what I'm seeing is the organizations usually start with experiments in pockets that are kind of low risk, which is what you described, right? It's happening here, it's happening there, but our company is still very transactional, very product focused, and we make a lot of money doing that. So there's this huge risk of cannibalization, which is usually what slows the company down, and then there's also the cultural challenges of just changing mindset, changing behavior, changing metrics, changing job titles. So once you have some successful experiments, what you need, this will be sort of my prescription for success, first thing is you need a CEO and a board that support this change and that understand it. So that would be step one. So if I were in a company and I were a middle manager and my CEO did not think this was important, I don't know that I would be staying. I mean, or I certainly wouldn't be hitching my professional career star to that wagon, or my wagon to that star, whatever it is. If you have the support of your leadership, then what I would do is map out the steps. I call it learning and leverage. So you want to say, what is the reason that I'm not comfortable making this our total? Like if I were in charge, would I make this the way that the company did business tomorrow? And the answer almost always is no. You say, what are the questions that are unanswered that I need to learn the answers to? So for example, you might say, I don't know if today's customers would buy this new offering. Like an example of like Electronic Arts, right? They have a $60, their games are $60-ish to buy. They offer a subscription for $100, which gives you access to all the games, right? Their biggest fear is that the people that buy 2 or 3 games are gonna subscribe and nobody else will, right? So you figure out cannibalization. You understand what that risk is. So those are the kinds of things where you want to understand it as the entrepreneur inside the company. And then you have your leverage questions, which are, I want to do this, but I don't have the leverage to do it. So these are the questions that have to be answered for your partners, right? You say, well, if I switched everything right now, these 3 partners would abandon us and we would be out of business. Or my colleague in a different department will not support me, will not change how they make the products to be more of a subscription model because they don't believe me, because I haven't proven that this can make them money, because there's no role for them. So I would figure those things out, and then I would say, what's the first step, second step, third step, and I would kind of move through those steps to get to kind of broader adoption. Does that help?
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
So the only thing worse than paying once for something and not using it is paying every month and not using it. With a lot of subscription services, I find that, for example, I'll go months without watching Netflix, or I'll go months without using SoundCloud or whatever it is. Is it viable for these businesses to charge you only in months that you use the service, or is that best moderated by these third parties that now will remind you of what subscriptions you have that you aren't using? If a client came to you and said, I want to be helpful to my customers and only charge them in the months that they use it, would you consider that a non-starter, or is that possible?
So this is a great question. So first of all, I will acknowledge that there is this big feeling of subscription fatigue that a lot of people are feeling, where they're saying, I don't even know how many subscriptions I have, I'm pretty sure I'm not using a lot of them, or even, I don't want to have to subscribe to that. I just want to own it. Why do I have to subscribe? Why are you making me subscribe when I just want to buy it? So there's a lot of kind of backlash right now around, because there's so many subscription models and a lot of them don't make sense. So that is a problem. Used to be that subscription companies would hide the subscription button, and they were actually they would teach each other that. So like I've been to conferences where they're actually showing you, here's how to make it really hard for someone to cancel, and maybe they'll forget for another month. And they'll say things like, we get an extra 2 months of subscription by moving the cancel button here, or by requiring people to call in on Tuesdays. Netflix, one of the things that they have adhered really strongly to since the day they were founded is that they only sell monthly. They do not have an annual subscription because they want to be able to say cancel at any time. They want to make it as easy as possible for you to get out of it. Now, you're suggesting something that's even one step further, which is pausing it or not charging them when they don't use it. And so that's different than a subscription model, I think. That's a pay-per-use model. And many companies have that, and that's also a good model. The challenge with that model is if you have a product or service where you want people to feel like they can use it a lot, and where the greater benefits accrue to them using it a lot, a subscription model can have a psychological effect of getting somebody to feel more comfortable with using it a lot. It's why we go to all-inclusive vacations, even if it ends up costing more than if you paid for your meals a la carte. So it's a good model, pay as you go. But it's not subscription, it's a little bit different, and there are some organizations that have very long-term relationships that are pay-as-you-go. So I think of restaurants and hotels and a lot of hospitality businesses. So yeah, it definitely can be a good option. Time for a couple more?
Sure.
What do you think are the implications of California's new data privacy laws on the membership economy?
Yeah, so data privacy, I used to say, like 5 years ago, I used to say, the cost of privacy is that people don't know you. So you have to decide, if you want to be treated like a member, if you want to have a feeling of belonging, if you want to be recognized as an individual when you interact with an organization, you need to share your data. And I still think that's true. What's happened is, I think a lot of organizations didn't, I talk about the idea of the forever promise, is that it means that you trust the company and you don't feel like you have to be an expert in how they do things in order to take care of yourself or get a fair treatment. And that has not happened with a lot of organizations. They have not, they have used our data for things that I think we didn't realize they were using our data for, or that didn't make sense given what the nature of the relationship was. And they've also been, I don't want to say sloppy, but not as careful in protecting our data as they should be. And so as a result, we're seeing a rise in data privacy laws and data protection, not just in California, but globally. So it makes it harder to have an ongoing digital relationship. Makes it harder to provide a personalized experience on the side of the company. So the quality will go down, but it also, it's a trade-off. The reason we give up our data is because we want a really customized experience.
Thanks for coming in to talk to us. It seems like the membership economy functions really well in the economy we've had for the last few years, where disposable income is high, consumer confidence is high, and people are willing to pay for non-pecuniary things like a sense of belonging or ego. So my question to you is, what does the membership economy looks like when the economy takes a turn and people aren't as willing or able to put out money for things on a yearly or monthly basis, but they only want to pay for things as they're able to?
Yeah, so the real question comes up, I think what you're talking about is right now, it's easier to sell, certainly it's easier to sell entertainment, but it's also easier for people to commit to long-term relationships up front because they have more disposable income. In many cases, having a subscription is the cheapest way. Accessing something instead of owning it is less cash outlay. So for example, if you look at the car example, most of the car manufacturers now have a subscription model where you can access the cars instead of owning it. So you may be paying more per month, but you have no long-term commitment. Same thing is true if you're accessing, let's say, vacation home, if you're accessing any kind of expensive item that has stored value. So in many cases, a subscription can be a less expensive way. Sharing economy kind of business models where we all share the same assets and we get a lower cost, that can be high value. So I don't think that subscriptions are kind of good, they're not only useful in a good economic environment, in a good economic climate, but I think like anything, there's so many subscriptions right now that are not habits, that are not seen by the consumer as a utility, as something that they can't give up, and lots of them will be out of business. And right now, I think there's a flurry, there's a bubble of subscription stuff, like those subscription boxes I was talking about. I mean, you can get a subscription to, socks, ties, cigars. I mean, at some point, you don't need all of this. You don't need all this surprise and delight and discovery. You just need, getting your razors, you're not going to say, well, the economy's down, so I'm not going to shave anymore, right? And getting them on subscription means you don't run out, you get a lower price, you're going to buy them anyway, you don't have to go to the store. So those kinds of subscriptions, I think, will last.
Okay, one more. We have one back here. Dean?
Once again, thank you for coming to talk to us. When you're looking at your revenue streams as a membership economy, do you think it is better to target the people that are going to be doing few transactions but very pricely, or trying to target people that are just going to be doing a lot of transactions at a very low price? So do you think it just overall depends on your model? Or like when you're starting, should you try focusing on one more than the other, as you have seen in a lot of different membership economies?
Yeah, this is a really good question. What you want to do, I don't want to kind of go through the whole process, but what you want to do is you want to start by saying, who are your customers that have greatest lifetime value? What is the behavior that you want to encourage? So you might say, let's say that you sell makeup. Let's say that you're a makeup company. You might find that that the people who only buy infrequently are not as profitable, as the people who come in every week and are always interested in the latest thing. You would want to learn more about both groups and see who you can build a better offer around and who has, the greatest potential to have the highest value over the lifetime of the relationship. And so in some cases, the people that make fewer, bigger transactions where they say, I don't want to mess around shopping all the time. I just go in, I buy everything I need for the year. I'm not price sensitive, and then I'm done. That would be a better customer because they're more profitable than the person that comes in on their lunch break, every couple of weeks and only buys the things that are on super sale. On the other hand, it may be that the people that come in, every few weeks are the people that have the propensity to be the best customers. And what you want to do is remove the friction of coming into the store, and so you give them whatever free shipping to drive a greater wallet share. So it really comes down to understanding the customer, understanding the lifetime value, and understanding their total wallet of what they could be spending with you. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
So, on behalf of the faculty, students, and staff of the Mendoza College of Business, some tchotchkes for your luggage on the way home.
Thank you.
And our thanks for your being here, Robbie
Yeah.
Baxter.
Thank you.